I hope, and in fact, I know, even just by checking in on the various Slack channels, that this has been a productive several hours spent together. So we cannot wait to hear from you. Just throwing it over to our sponsors once again, our co-conveners, to thank them for making just this time and the open registration and the openness of this event all possible. So thank you so much to our sponsors, as you can see at the top. And over here too, we got them everywhere. Thank you, co-conveners, really appreciate you. We know that you just came from pretty intense working sessions, and you hopefully enjoyed a nice break, replenished and nourished the body and the soul. What we're going to be doing now is we're actually going to be kicking it over to each of the working sessions to have representatives share their final progress at the Unconference. Of course, we know this is just the jumping off point. As our fearless leader, Stephanie Parati, shared yesterday, the long-term vision of ShapingEDU and how the Unconference model works, where we take the ideas with the most momentum and the work with the most momentum for the Unconference, and we find ways to nourish it throughout the year and actually bring it to fruition into final products and tangible outcomes for the larger, broader learning community to enjoy and benefit from, and also contribute to. So that being said, let me check in with my amazing co-MC, Stephanie, see how you're doing.
Hey, there we go. I'm doing great. Thank you, Sam. Participated in a couple of groups and really enjoyed the discussions there. So I really appreciate everybody's thoughtfulness and time as we put all of this together. And with that being said, let's do a drum roll and call up group number 1, Invasion of the Degree Snatchers.
Oh no, it's me again. I swear, for those of you following along from home, I begged everyone else in the group to present, but instead they said, "You're the best looking, you do it." So I said, okay. But,
can't argue with that, Dave.
No, you really can't. Actually, there were so many good ideas. I'm so excited. This has just been an amazingly productive group. So I want to commend them all on all their great community or contributions. So the first thing that we decided to do is to be very reasonable. We're going to actually form a community of practice, starting with the people that were participating to carry this work forward. But before I tell you what we're going to do, I need to frame this a little bit because, you know, the invasion of the credential or the degree snatchers sounds a little adversarial, but what we actually kind of came to the conclusion when you ask, what's the problem with micro-credentials? There's a lot of problems surrounding it, but I think that the heart of it we decided was that institutions are having difficulty creating a comprehensive strategy for tracking and using job relevant skills. So that's kind of why the micro-credential market exists. It exists because maybe universities haven't done the best job at saying, what specifically have you been prepared to do? So rather than do an either or, we've done a both and we decided that what we needed to do was to create a context and a series of tools or toolkits. And there's work to be done, but the first idea would be to create a student-facing toolkit so that we would encourage students to advocate for their own skill acquisition, to talk to faculty about what relevant skills are coming out of their courses, to potentially build some training and teach students how to better articulate their own skills. So they don't just go say, I have a degree in English, but to say, you know, here's the kinds of things I've learned to do through my career. So that would be kind of the student part of it. And so we'd have a kit of tools to help students. The next part of it would be a design/faculty toolkit that would really then enable faculty to be a part of this. I mean, one way of thinking about this is instead of leaving the world to do micro-credentialing and badging, what if faculty took a primary role in saying, these are the career relevant kinds of skills you're learning in my class, everything from biology to philosophy, from engineering to Romance languages. It doesn't really matter what the discipline is. And again, we want to create a set of tools so that it's not just on the faculty's shoulders, but maybe ID resources that can come in and help them do the work. Finally, we're looking at an administrative toolkit that really helps make the case why this is beneficial to enrollment, retention, student success, also to framework out maybe some questions around how this might relate to promotion and tenure, some of the measures and metrics you might track in your organization. So just a little bit of work, but we're excited about this. And we think that in a certain sense, the only way to fight the degree snatchers is to start offering our own micro-credentials inside of our institutions, job relevant, career relevant, interpersonal, personal relevant. And we think it's going to be a huge success. And so with that, I would invite anyone else from my group that wants to correct or addendum or extend to please do that. Awesome. We took good notes. Thanks, team.
Thank you so much, Dave. Over to you, Sam.
Yes, Dave, that was fantastic. I heard a lot of great ideas in there, a lot of tangible things that we could work together to bring to life. So lots of fodder and thoughts going through my brain. Really appreciate you representing the group. You know, if you are the best looking at the Shaping EDU Wicked Problems Unconference, I think that's all in alignment. That makes proper sense given the wicked nature and the creepy nature of this unconference. No, I kid, Dave. You're the best. Thank you so much for always facilitating. Dave's been with us since the very beginning in 2018, when I personally called on him to do a TED style talk to actually seed some ideas for the beginning of Shaping EDU. So thank you, Dave. And thank you so much to Group One for these wonderful thoughts, ideas, and work. Okay, that's going to be really hard to top. Group One set the standard really, really high. But it's time to call on our Mary Shellyans for representing the outcomes for Frankensteining tools into strategies.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm speaking to you from the future. I am President Zerchi of Indefatigable You. It is the year 2027. As you can see from my background, we have some issues with heat and climate change that have impacted the functioning of our university. This is our student union building. So my predecessor, President Arcos, who I believe you talked to yesterday, had developed a program for growing enrollment at the university. It was a very successful program. We reached a bunch of new students, both from the perspective of their ages and their accessibility to the system, but also from their geographical regions were spread out. But we've encountered a real problem. Our electricity has become unreliable due to climate change. The Colorado River Basin has dried up. We're not getting any hydropower from Hoover Dam and the other dams up there. And so as a result, the governor has announced rolling blackouts for both us and our students, and these are unpredictable. So we don't know when we're going to be able to connect and when we're not going to be able to connect, which obviously presents a serious set of problems that we have to face in order to maintain the functioning of the university. So with that in mind, my erstwhile group, any one of which is welcome to join me, the brilliant team that helped us work through this, came up with a set of basic strategies. I'm gonna go ahead and share the Google Doc that we collectively worked on here. The link in the chat for anybody who wants to look at it. And I'm going to give you a few highlights from it. So first of all, we came up with some strategies. First one is, number one, fund alternative connectivity for our students, faculty, and staff to make them more anti-fragile remotely, because even though the university may be up at a given time, we don't know that they're going to be up at a given time. Secondly, explore high-tech, low-tech fusions. So how can we use a range of technologies from pencil and paper all the way up to cloud computing to create packets for our students to make sure that they're ready, whatever their technological circumstance of the moment is. And then finally, apply universal design concepts to maintain communities of learning so that everyone feels that they can have access to that larger learning community at any given time, no matter what happens with their technology. They can go back, asynchronously if necessary. So we've come up with a number of excellent solutions of tools that we could use to implement these. One idea for content acquisition was to go back to an old model that was pioneered by the Open University in the UK, which is to send out a box to every remote student that has materials that they're going to need for their classes. We can also do this electronically with document repositories so that if the university systems go down, they still have access to this stuff. They don't even need to have internet access if we send them physical paper. ASU is apparently playing around with a new app called Circle In, which allows for a lot of interesting community sharing that can be asynchronous, and it's cloud-based, so therefore it's going to be a lot more anti-fragile. Inquiry, using platforms like TikTok, Circle In, Flipgrid, peer networks to create a more robust student support network where we have people, peers, as well as student support people who can help these students who are already more challenged and they're remote, but we don't know whether a particular advisor is going to be available at a particular time because their power may be out. So we have, we can either do it asynchronously by recording messages and throwing them back and forth, or we can have a fire brigade style where if person number 1 is down, then it goes to person number 2, and so on and so forth until you find somebody who does have power, who can help that student who is panicking because he or she can't access Canvas in the broiling Arizona heat. Third, practice. Now we started plugging in some of the XR tools that we have in our toolbox for augmented reality, AI tools, simulations. Things can be done asynchronously, created by the university, but that are available as resources for the students so that when they have access, they can use them and practice their whatever it may be, from fixing, repairing engines to building solar panels for our new anti-fragile energy network to practicing math problems. Productions. Well, one thing we can do is involve the students in actually helping with the project of making the campus more anti-fragile. In other words, extending that human network beyond faculty and staff to the students, so that if any one person, or any one group of people is cut off, they can get to somebody who knows more than they do. That's the key. Discussion. We didn't think that was going to be too terribly. Most of the platforms here that we developed from the 2022 project are asynchronous to begin with, so they're already pretty anti-fragile. So we didn't think that was going to be a major issue. Collaboration. We had already talked yesterday with the 2022 project in order to make things very practical to partner up with real world companies, alumni networks, and so on and so forth to actually do real world projects and platforms. In this particular iteration, Allie, our wonderful representative from Slack, suggested that we actually say, okay, we can even decentralize the operations of that program where the students can go out to corporate locations and learn there if the campus goes down. So that would make that, again, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, and the more you can distribute things, the more anti-fragile you're going to be in the face of adversity. Curiosity. I think people, when they see the cool things that are happening at our campus, they're going to come flocking. So I don't think curiosity is going to be a big problem. The platforms we were talking about yesterday, Slack and LinkedIn, are already cloud-based, so they shouldn't be affected, distributed. They shouldn't be affected in the same way as something that's on campus. So a great group again. We had a good discussion. Where this is going, where this has always been intended to go, is to create a guidebook ultimately for ShapingEDU that would help people sort through tools. We had a really good suggestion from Robin Sullivan. She is working on a project with the SUNY folks called MTech, which might actually be a nice complementary project. So we had something unexpected and tertiary come out of these discussions. And so definitely going to be looking at figuring out a way to hook into what they're doing. But the idea is that this would be a guidebook that you could give to faculty administrators that would then allow them to sort of think through some of these problems and build tools so that they're ready when the inevitable occurs, the next COVID, the next climate change inspired rolling or Lisa Gustinelli, South Florida periodic hurricanes, or my periodic hurricanes here in Houston. So those kind of things are going to happen, and they're going to happen more, and there are going to be more disruptions because of climate change. And I think it's time that we think of our tools in the context of that reality. So signing off from 2027. I hope 2021 gets better for you guys. I know it's tough back there.
Tom from the future. Oh, that was a really exciting glimpse. I love the letter and the format and the creativity exhibited by the team to actually unleash such a comprehensive and thorough blueprint. So very commendable, group 2. Over to you, Stephanie, for more.
Not bad for 2 hours worth of work.
There you go.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. So we're going to move on to number 3, A Quiet Place. How to better engage virtual learners and avoid burnout. Melody, Megan, and Janet, who would like to report out from your group?
It is me. I'm Megan, coming to you today. I am going to share my screen with you right quick. Huge thank you to Melody, who really was the driver in creating, physically creating this website that we kind of put together and going through it. And we're going to talk through some of the topics that we discussed, some things that we talked through on it, and then kind of what we came to believe our next steps might be. So as we go through, I think where we really had to start was talking about like what is engagement? What does engagement mean? Is that a focus on learning outcomes, finding excitement? And in order to create engagement, you first must define engagement. That's going to be incredibly personal to each different educator and learner as to what engagement means to them. So it's creating that space where somebody can say, this is what engagement means to me. How can I find it with you? And through that, it's the creation of strategy. So as we create these strategies and the items that we have that will create senses of trust, we're doing that through that hands-on, minds-on that we discussed yesterday. And what that trust allows the group to do is move from group to team. As was brought up in our session and folks can speak to, nobody likes group work. Nobody likes group work. Everybody likes teamwork. So how that's building that engagement to take a group of people to a team of people. So how do we do that? We look to offer multiple ways to engage students. You've got introverts, extroverts, introverted extroverts, extroverted introverts, people who don't like labels. You're gonna see a little bit of everybody, and you can't engage everybody in the same way. So if you differentiate that engagement style, you're gonna get more learning across the board. In that, how much do you need as an instructor to manage? You're going to have people who are always going to be more willing to come to the front, to speak up, to, as some folks put it, take up all the air. It's me, I do that, but it's fine. And is that always a bad thing? If that's a space where we can kind of take an approach where you've got one person who's willing to be more vocal, but others are engaging in a more written method. So I think the big thing that came out of this tactics idea is, how are we putting together these transferable skills? Are we teaching students how to take this class? Or are we teaching students how to interact with others in real world scenarios, whether that be their work life or in their community? Which brings us to a big topic of burnout. Students are burnout, instructors are burnout. There is, let me give you 20 more tools. Do you want to use Discord? Do you want to use Slack? You want to use this weird thing you've never heard of? Because I'll find it for you. So kind of how do we go through that? And the engagement, is it engagement for engagement's sake? What is the direction that we're looking for? How are these things designed in a way that it isn't expectations put on, for example, the faculty to continue to adjust the way that they're engaging and differentiating for every single student? Because that's just, like, it sounds nice, but it's just not reasonable. So where is the intersection, the center of our Venn diagram between what the student needs and what the institution needs and what the instructor needs? And that includes managing your boundaries. Just as we have to manage our boundaries in face-to-face, peer-to-peer settings, we have to do it in our homes and online as well. Now that our computers are in our homes, you are at work, you're at school, you're doing everything right in this space. Where are the allowances for the time to log off, to walk away, to say, I am going to completely disengage from this right now, and to continue to build that community outside of a strictly digital space. So these are the resources that we short resource list that we came up with. Loads of really interesting things that were put up, and we can share out our Google Doc as well. That's got a lot more just kind of organic ideas thrown in there. Something that we had discussed, and please, anybody else from the group, feel free to jump in here. Something that we've really discussed is how to use something like we've presented here, like this Spark. It's engaging, it's quick, you can roll through it, to present these sorts of resources in a way that is accessible. I think that we've all seen toolkits or resource lists come out that is just a dense document. You look at it and you say, that's a lot of words, no thank you, and you walk off, and you aren't able to actually access any of those materials. And how we would like to see something put together that is more interactive. Sorry, my dogs are gonna start barking. More interactive, more quick hits. Let me watch this 90-second video. Let me listen to this little snippet. Let me see how we are really digging in and making these sorts of resources accessible. It's a one-pager on how to set up a Slack. You know, these sorts of things that could make these engagement opportunities more engaging. Hey, yo. That's what we got. Thanks, friends.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Lots of kudos on your presentation in the chat. So thank you guys for your support. And your dog agrees. Yes, kudos from the dog.
I have to say my dog agrees too. His ears perked up during the presentation.
Yes.
That was phenomenal. Not only illuminating, but also really visually just beautiful and descriptive to drive home the points that you were making. And I have to admit, I'm deep in the Twitterverse, hashtag ShapingEDU, wicked probs with a Z. And I definitely, Megan, had to quote you on the nobody likes group work, but everybody likes teamwork. I don't think I've ever heard it articulated exactly like that. It's so simple, but it's so true. So thank you for leaving us with endless inspiration for product development moving forward. Next up, I'd like to call on our collaborative, merged, composite of beautiful group. I don't remember the full name. I know it's now Mirror, something about dialing S for student success. I know the name is morphed some, but calling on all the brilliant people thinking about student voice, mental health, and DEI, of course. Welcome, group 4 + 6 + 8.
Well, thank you, Samantha. Thanks, everybody. These are hard acts to follow, but we've got something pretty aesthetically pleasing up our sleeves too. So I hope it'll work. I'm Chris Haynes from University of Colorado Boulder. I guess I wasn't really nominated. I was the one that said, okay, fine, I'll report out for the group. So that's why I'm here in front of you today. But I have the great pleasure of benefiting from the flexibility that our Shaping EDU community has afforded in allowing our groups to kind of hack the boundaries and find natural affinities and act on those. So as Samantha said, I started out in group 4, and we got some visitors and some collaborators from group 8. And then today we got some visitors and collaborators from group 6. And so now we have lots of people together. And I think that happened in a really organic way. And at each stage of those kind of growth points for our working group, I think we were able to inject a lot of much needed, freshness and diversity of perspective and diversity of experience kind of in background to really make this thing as good as it can possibly be. So I will do a couple of things here. I'm going to put our working Google document into the chat. I should also, because we talked about it, Samantha, I should read the full title. The full title of our group is Mirror, Mirror, Spotlight on the Wall, Whose Voice is Not Being Heard at All? Dial S for Success, Voice plus Choice plus Community Building, Community Building for Lifelong Learning. So we found this to be a very proper academic paper title, right? It's got multiple punctuation marks, multiple colons, multiple combined ideas. It really fits in to the flow. So you've got the document there, and a lot of what we'll speak to today starts around page 6 of that document. What I'm also going to do is I think I can do this, try to add a file to the Zoom chat here, because Laura came into our group and just with a level of mastery I've rarely seen, I suppose, visually illustrated the synthesizing conversation that we had as a group when we were thinking about what our deliverable is. So let me see if I can get this into the chat. It is in the group 4 Slack channel if you guys would prefer it that way, but hopefully that'll work.
Chris, can I add it to your Google Doc too?
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. I haven't had a chance to add it to the Google Doc, so that's
I'm gonna
perfect.
go ahead and do that for you.
In multiple means, and then I'll also share my screen with it so that you guys can see it a little bit bigger. Okay, so as Samantha indicated at the start, our combined groups were thinking about student voice and choice, mental health and wellness, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and belonging. So really, when it comes down to it, we are grounded in an idea that's captured in the left side of this drawing here: breaking power barriers between formal roles like student, faculty, institution, administrator, all those roles, to enable empowerment, self-determination, advocacy, sensitivity, and allyship, all with student and universal learner success in mind. So where we kind of flowed into, as we talked about our deliverable, was really a toolbox / kit / shed / hardware store, as you'll see out on the left side of the drawing, that's kind of grounded in the commitment to an authentic sense of belonging, and that operates in kind of an open framework model that can be adapted and adopted across different institutional contexts, like all of the different flavors of higher education that we come from, and also K-12, and that serves a variety of stakeholders or user groups. So we're thinking those just right off the top would be students of all stripes, right? So first-gen students, quote unquote traditional college students, quote unquote non-traditional college students, transfer students, all kinds of different students, faculty of all different ranks and relationships to tenure, administrators and staff, all the different stakeholders that are in our institution, we feel should be served by a framework of student and learner success that grounds itself in a sense of an authentic sense of belonging. So there's a couple different dimensions to this toolbox. We've thought about them in a lightly kind of stacked way. So the base dimension is community and culture that would highlight and make visible values and allyship. Then there's a kind of individual human dimension of wellness and health, that component to student success. I should say it's individual and also systemic, so it's part of this larger toolkit. There are the orchestrated technologies that we have at our disposal and that we can pull together to meet certain needs that kind of help bring community members and stakeholders together in those lower tiers. And then on the top of that, this is in service of finding, I should say, putting learners in a position such that their academic experience is authentic, meaningful to them, and that gets them where they want to go, right? This is coming all the way back to sort of the original Group 4 sense of student voice and choice. So we're thinking that this kind of toolkit has a sense of being adoptable and adaptable to a number of different institutional contexts. It is going to serve all of those different kind of stakeholder groups that might engage with it as part of this open framework. That it's supported by folks who are professional in the field of student success and mentorship, but that also involves peers and peer-to-peer relationships for students and universal learners. And that the aspects of this that are cultural and technological aren't simply about a kind of triage support model for students, but they become a vector of an ongoing sense of wellness and health in an overall learning journey. So you might be asking yourself at this point, well, that's a very elegantly drawn and well-designed box, Group 468, but what's inside it? And that's a question that we've put in the what comes next category, because as Tom said, you can do a lot in 2 hours of work. You can't do everything in 2 hours of work, but there's a value proposition here in the sense that we aren't sure we wanted to predefine what the tools are, because part of the logic here is communal co-creation and bringing voices together to identify what kinds of tools would be beneficial for individual stakeholder group local contexts, and what kind of tools could be universally adopted at a particular type of institution or at a more systemic level. So I think there would be a tremendous amount of exciting work to be done in bringing people together to figure out what sorts of tools exist now that serve these different dimensions, what sorts of gaps exist for which tools need to be built, and what do we need to go to the hardware store for. So that is sort of my summation of what we've talked about over the last handful of hours. Again, I'm just really thankful for the group that came together for this, both the multiple different co-facilitator groups that all came together from the combined groups, and all the different participants who stuck with it from yesterday to today and through to this report out. And of course, I'd invite anyone who was in that group to chime in at this stage and correct anything that I've said or add any other valence to it. But it's a great conversation. We had a great group of folks, and we look forward to continuing these ideas.
You're here, Chris, in Group 468. Very inspiring, and you definitely delivered on the visual promise. I have to say, if we're picking quotes now from every working session, I love the part in your documents and this group's document. This framework isn't just a triage support, but a vector of ongoing wellness and learning journey health. That in of itself is a mission statement. So really appreciate the level of thought and thoroughness and thinking how we can move this forward. Awesome job. Way to go. Back to you, Stephanie.
All right. So Sam, since we've combined 4, 6, and 8, would you like to introduce Group 7?
Oh, that I can. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Nightmare on Accessibility Street has actually been like a sweet dream, the way that they've come together. So I cannot wait to hear what this group has to say on, the technical and cultural changes that we got to make and how we are going to be making those. Group 7, over to you.
Hello, I see in the chat, and I guess I'll ask just in case. They're asking what happened to Group 5. Would you like them? I can go now, and 5 can go after me. You let me know.
We're fine. Go ahead. We'll go after you.
All right. Waha, we beat out 5. Okay. So, Nicole talking again. I'm volunteering for my group, but as yesterday, I want to acknowledge that this is most definitely a very collaborative group effort, and I want to acknowledge our facilitators who've been wonderful. Anne, Adero, Kathy, and Michael, as well as my fellow participants, Norma, Jean, and Lindsay. So we are talking about Nightmare on Accessibility Street, creating a space and place for all online. A super brief reminder, the piece of the wicked problem we were addressing was awareness and influence on the importance of accessibility. as well as the idea of how might I, as a staff, faculty, administrator, student, or other, influence a shift in mindset around influencing accessibility. So we had come to the agreement that we were going to create a roadmap to assist individuals with influence and awareness. And I'll give a little bit of background of that conversation that ensued. So one of the major pieces of this, of course, oh good, great. We have a wonderful screen share here from Adero. So we're focusing on the issues, what can we do to influence decision makers, and how can we get people on board without carrying the big stick of OCR, and what can individuals do regardless of their role. So one of the first things we were thinking about was how to gather resources to promote large-scale impacts, many of these which already currently exist. So for instance, we had thought yesterday one of our big level ideas was to come up with a consortium of universities to pressure publishers to develop accessible materials. But we also recognize that there are a lot of existing consortiums already, such as EDUCAUSE and Athen, whose mission is a network of higher education professionals committed to improving accessibility for students, faculty, staff, and administrators. So we think that there's a huge problem, a wicked problem, you might say, in that there are already existing resources and organizations, and how can we help address that beyond just building another resource list or another place to look for more resources. So one of the big questions we have is, how do we give the experience to decision makers so that they become aware of the impact on their students and so they can make better decisions? We recognize we need to build awareness by explaining or demonstrating how accessibility is good for everyone. It's a broad audience rather than only disability. And we need to explain in terms of dollars. We also need to identify the players. We would probably need to use DEI efforts as a platform and to involve people at every level. That's students, faculty, staff, developers, community members, and corporate partners. Okay, so all that, here's what we are creating. We are creating a working living document, a roadmap that can be open for contribution. So we've been thinking this name here is accessibilityadvocate.org. We recognize we want to increase awareness, but a lot of people are trying to increase awareness. So we think that more than awareness, we need ways to help advocate for help advocate for accessibility. And we really want this to be open to faculty resources, student resources, developer resources, staff resources, corporate and partner resources, as well as administrator and leadership resources. And we think of this as like one source of truth for everybody. So instead of having more and more resources to look at, that you can go one place and find a way for you to move forward, essentially a customizable list of what to do next. So all that being said, what do we do? How are we doing that? And where do we go next? We strongly recommend the creation of a working group that builds out this resource. And we've already created 4 steps of what we would do. I could read those steps super briefly. I'm going to do it fast voice. Create a catalog, identify all the processes, gather data, and create small examples. I think is the fastest version of that list. But we also are interested in building training for faculty, staff, and administrators for accessibility issues using AR. So again, we're trying to recap this. The idea is creating an accessibilityadvocate.org where you have one place to go that you can find existing resources, learn how to join different groups and advocacy groups, learn how to advocate for accessibility depending on your role, whether you're inside or outside of higher ed, learn how to become part of the working group that we are recommending gets created here, and learn how to develop partnerships with corporate entities to develop training for larger groups. I think that's everything. So yeah, great. This feels like a team Stitch Avengers assemble. Sure, I agree with that. So I think that's it. And I would love to, again, invite any of my fellow group members to add in information, or I welcome questions. Thank you, Adero, for sharing. Woo-hoo. Go team.
Did a
Amazing
great
work.
job. Great
Yes.
job.
Anyone else from the group would like to chime in?
I think Nicole did a pretty doggone good job of it.
All right, high five. Well, we're gonna go.
I
two
do
steps
want to
back.
say,
Oh,
don't go to
ahead.
that website yet. We don't have it.
Yeah, no,
TBD.
it is available.
Oh, scoop it
but
up.
$9.99 a year says GoDaddy anyway.
Well, noted. Put that on our to-do list. Thank you so much, Group 7, and we'll shimmy back to Group 5. We're in an unconference. Here we go. We're going to walk backwards. 365 days later, post-pandemic best practices.
Hello, everyone. Since I was suffering from hat envy, I felt like I should put my journey hat on.
Nice.
And I welcome you all to today's press release. Let us take a moment. Let me share some visuals. It is Friday, and we decided right up front that our best way to work with you is to offer you free beer. Free beer for everyone. So that is on the table right now. However, failing a budget for free beer, let's get right down to the press release from the land of 365 plus days later, post-pandemic best practices. We are proposing a year-long effort to tell stories that are inspirational, actionable, engaging. We want to highlight the best that we have seen and encourage others to join our party by doing the same. Our journey began this morning with the rich stories shared by our wonderful student panelists. We propose an enlightened journey towards success in the post-pandemic era that is permanent, accessible, and as anti-fragile as it can possibly be. With that, I will turn it over to Lisa, and I will also be sharing my screen so that you see where we're going.
So this means we need help. We need you. Remember, there's beer involved. This is a living document and a living project. Every individual has a story to tell, and every story is valuable in creating a pathway on this journey. We've actually created a grid to guide our work, as you can see on the screen. We started out by identifying several issues or concerns that were mentioned by members of our group, as well as students in this morning's panel. These include, but are not limited to, access to missed synchronous classes, feeling of isolation, student resilience, wellness, alternative assessments, and others that will be further developed. We then discussed possible solutions as well as recommendations for how we might take what we've learned during the pandemic and use that in a post-pandemic world. With the goal of developing anti-fragility, we have included a black swan aspect for thinking beyond to the recommendations section. We added tags to make the information searchable and sortable, as well as examples and possible resources.
So our approach here is very much inspired by how the ShapingEDU broadband access group has been operating. We're proposing to meet online probably on a regular basis, maybe every other week. Each meeting will have one specific thing that we want to accomplish. So we're putting out concrete, tangible things throughout the year to keep people moving and let them see what we've developed together here that is replicable in their settings. And we're ready to look at this as a year-long project where at the end of the year, we see whether we can declare success and move on to something else, or whether there has been enough happening to pivot onto a new mandate within that same whole idea of let's take the best lessons we're learning as a result of the changes that we're going through. So bottom line, if you'd like to be part of this, with the possibility of free virtual beer included, please contact any of us. The contact information is at the top of the shared document that I think one of us is going to be, oh, there's the free beer. The shared document should be put into the chat right now. And I'm going to, at this point, because I'm starting to stumble here, I think I'm wearing the wrong hat. I was sitting in some kind of a winter conference and suddenly found myself beamed into the future 6 months later, and I'm trying to catch on to this thing. So I will turn this over to our press officers to take any questions that you currently have. Gosh, you're all enjoying the free beer. No questions. All right. Then.
Any questions from the peanut gallery? Feel free to unmic yourselves.
I think one of the things that we did find really pertinent, everything that we talked about really touches on everything everybody else has been doing. And then saying, you know, and the idea is, okay, what have we learned and what could we move forward with? What could, you know, in that post-pandemic world, what do we take with us that works to continue to do the best for our students?
Fantastic.
Sorry, let me add too that not just students, we talked a lot about students, but we also have in mind, you know, faculty and staff, because without their success, the students are not going to have the educational experience that they should.
Hear, hear. Group 5, do we feel like we've sufficiently covered the amazing territory and solutions and design that you've proposed?
Okay, so we're on then. We're willing to incorporate any other group that's not approved and authorized through ShapingEDU, although I can't imagine that happening.
Awesome.
File your articles of incorporation with us. We will incorporate you. Since it's futile.
Well, thank you for the free beer. You know, I'm sure that's appreciated by all. And we really appreciate all the thought, all the really amazing discussions that have gone into this. It seems like such a great composite of a diversity of voices. Much appreciated. We actually just have, I can't believe it, but we have one more group, one more report out left, standing in the way of us and some grand prizes and some wrap party. So I want to thank Group 5 so very much for their time and talent, and kick it over to Brain Scan 2021. What is going on in the world of XR?
All right, thank you, Sam. Here's sort of what has been a very, I think, engaged discussion over the last 2 days. Starting yesterday, we're diving deeper into XR, AI, and ethics, and in the convergence of all of these and what that means to not just teaching and learning, but in academia, but also to society. We also explored a lot of our different backgrounds. It was a very good mix of both people coming from, sort of more teaching university position and roles, but we also have a number of our members who came in and out of the group who brought an industry background or have spent a significant time in industry, which was a really actually helpful and healthy discussion to have as we kind of think about this ever evolving field of XR and immersive learning. So as we came back and started to really think about what we want to create, about our outputs, what's needed in the world, I think there was a lot at play was our diverse backgrounds and how some of them are coming from institutions that have already spent some time onboarding faculty and students, exploring immersive projects, and others of us are coming because we want to, we want to get into the field. It's fascinating time to get into the field, and I think this is going to be an ongoing discussion. So as we really wanted to merge that, we came up with the output being something that will be a very responsive web resource, almost akin to an infographic, but on the web, and be very dynamic, and would be able to actually address from the very beginning, whether you're coming here to learn or you're coming here to actually, further, advance your understanding of XR or look for more resources. And that was, I think, the brilliance of us being exactly what the field today represents, which is people from industry, people from academia, and people who just are now kind of really curious about this field. So as we start thinking about it, what this kind of how this presents itself, what are some of the topics that want to be there, we thought then that would help us further kind of actually move into that idea that a lot of us, regardless whether you're novice or or you believe to be an expert or you hope to be one, and in the works, the idea of a kit to convince stakeholders, because in a lot of our roles is that people wanted to step into that or be part of this movement, introduce it to others faculty, introduce it to their own campus, to their own organization. And so we were really thinking that this is a kit that will be used to, to be able to bring actually a number of resources in bringing others to immersive learning. So that's another kind of point which we, as we taught. So more and work through what a user experience could be. In addition to that, we are thinking about the world, being immersive. And so we definitely felt that we're starting with a website, but we definitely want to go and build this as a virtual resource. So something that would be accessible on the web for a number of different good reasons, but also something that may live in a virtual space. So what is in that, kit to persuade or come and learn, sort of that, as I mentioned, very dynamic, responsive sort of web resource? Well, for some of us, data was an important thing. And what I mean by data is who's using it. So what is it, what are people using and who's using it? And that varies from both headsets to application to what kind of courseware has been designed that already exists. And then moving into, well, I like really understanding a little bit of where people have gone in terms of proof of concept. So some of us have been reading and writing, but others wanted to actually, I would love to have a curated sort of place with reports and studies that are already suggesting both pathways, but also suggesting some efficacy of this movement. And so we thought that will be in addition to some kind of more like high-level landscape data conversation, there will be some reports and studies resources. We immediately went, just as this conference has demonstrated, we want to hear from the students. We don't just want to hear from experts, but we want to actually hear from people that are today in class, sitting in part of our campuses or thinking about the future of their own education. So definitely like the voice of students and reference that. And then we also have really good champions about accessibility, and that is another area we want to work on. With that, at that point, we do appreciate novice people coming to this. We do want to bring others. So we thought we'll have a section that will be a just getting started section to just really. Some of these resources, while they hit people on a high level and are already in the works, but what if somebody's coming here to just get a little bit on board? They're thinking about a new project on their campus. They're thinking maybe a career change even, or getting in some place. So that's coming next. And then what comes after that is a whole lot of interest in all of us to think about case studies, whether it's representing a simulation, whether it's representing an application, a game, something that we felt that this part of our resource will be a living page and open to comments and contributions, because we thought that a lot of us actually build things on our own campuses and they're built for our own audiences, but not many people know. And, only if you're a colleague with somebody, that, hey, maybe the new school built something, but it's sitting on somebody's machine. And so we thought that a number of those pages would like to make actually open to contributors, for educators to come and being able to both share as well as comment. And the final sort of two elements of this dynamic web responsive sort of web app is the idea of the pedagogical framing. As some members of our group are very much situated and in the shoes of teachers and facilitators. It was very important for them to actually, and they've also been asked by their campuses to be able to explain the pedagogical framing of immersive learning. So there will be an area that will be with focus on learning and learners. And to wrap this all out, we know that this is not an easy ride. It's a technology that is very empowering, but at the same time, it's a technology that in the wrong hands can do really have a really negative impact on learners, on society, on a number of different levels. And so a section on ethical issues. And that was that idea, of deep fakes, but also the idea that, we came across several times is that in some ways presenting these virtual worlds and resources is another way of living in uncertainty and understanding how to cope with that as technology is ever, increasing its impact on our daily lives. And that sort of really tension that I think some people and more people in the future will feel between the virtual and physical. So that is where we are headed. We had a number of people who've stuck around for the whole day, but we also have visitors on both days. So we are very excited and like to invite you all who are here and, this sounds interesting to you and would like to contribute. Or in our, like, as we taught, even in our own group, we're thinking about people who would be able to, contribute more directly, others who will be able to explore and research, and then others who actually would love that they're new to this because they're the best to give us feedback. So if you're one of those folks, please let us know in the chat or any other way. And we'd love to include you in this ongoing discussion or by Slack as well. Obviously. So this is where we kind of landed today, and it's a journey. So it's a work in progress, but I want to thank everybody who contributed. XR is always a topic that takes time to get into, to think through its complexity. And so I really appreciate everybody who stick around and participated actively in this ever, more interesting conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. It's great.
Wow, that was amazing. I have to hand it to you, Maya and Emery. XR has been on the horizon for a while now, but every year there's different nuances and developments that come into play, and you always find ways to integrate them and help educate audiences really all over the globe. So thank you so much for working with Group 10 today. Group 10, fantastic job. Really can't wait to see what comes of this one. Really excited by what's been being proposed and stated as a reflection of responsible innovation. So kudos to Group 10 and kudos all around to everyone here who has participated in one or more of these working sessions and contributed to the amazing ideas, projects, resources, blueprints that we now are privy to helping build moving forward. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, everyone. Big round of applause for all of you. Yes. Hopefully you could hear my clapping. If I clap much louder, my dog will start barking. And Stephanie, over to you for any final words of wisdom before we move on to some grand prizes and parties.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who participated on any and all of the days. All of your contributions were welcome, and I appreciate everyone. Their patience with me as I have journeyed through my first Unconference event. So thank you so much for participating and supporting and helping shape this into something truly amazing. So kudos to you all for your contributions and the thoughtfulness of your responses and your input. I really appreciate that. So with that being said, we're going to take another peek, our last peek into the Wicked Prize Closet.
And this is completely my fault. We have another facilitator to turn to on the screen. Sometimes when we don't see her face, it sometimes slips the mind, but this artwork did not create itself, right? The canvas was populated by your amazing ideas, but it was synthesized with much thought and love from our own Karina Branson. So Karina, I'd love to invite you on to share this amazing graphic that's unfolded and any observations that you have.
Thank you. I'm just gonna quickly share my screen so people can see the graphic just a little larger. And 3, 2, 1, projection. All right. Wow. What an amazing week. I just love, again, to be a part of this community peripherally and get to listen, learn, and co-create with you all. So after, I mean, like Tom said, a couple hours of work each day, the collective power, wisdom, creativity, and expertise that you've all pulled together, the sum is really, no, the whole is really greater than the sum of the parts. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm personally just digging how accessibility and DEI and belonging have really infused into everything, and the holistic approach. Again, I maybe sound like a broken record, but really thinking about learners and instructors and everybody who goes into the education, who contributes to the education ecosystem. We're all humans. And so taking that into consideration, and I really think that student panel this morning set the tone for the flexibility, the compassion, and the curiosity. There's just amazing actual steps. I work with a lot of groups, and a lot of time there's just kind of grand ideas, and there's concrete steps, people committing to carrying this forward. And I think that's something extremely unique and exciting about the Shaping EDU community. This isn't just an unconference and then go back to put the fires out and check your email. This is a lifestyle, and people are part of this community and continue to actually make legit change in education for the betterment of learners and teachers, instructors, and the world. So looking forward to sharing this with you all so you can peruse at your own leisure. Thank you.
Karina, as always, you blew us away. Hopefully you can see the kind feedback pouring in the chat. Just amazed, not only by your artwork, but your ability to capture it all and do it so beautifully. I was thinking anti-fragility was a mindset and a lifestyle, but sure, Shaping EDU is a lifestyle too. And so, you know, actually shaping the future and doing it actively and transitioning from thought leadership to action leadership is such an important facet of this community. So thank you. We'll be sharing all the fantastic Karina art on our website and disseminating it via really all of our channels. So have no fear. You can collect them all.